The great chamber was silent. Thousands of alien representatives sat in their floating seats, her eyes fixed on the small human woman standing alone in the center of the floor. Ambassador Una Park kept her back straight and her face calm, even as her heart pounded in her chest. High Arbiter Vel, a tall creature with silver skin and forearms, looked down at her from his elevated throne. His voice echoed through the chamber like rolling thunder. "The Galactic Council has reached a decision regarding the human species," he announced. "After careful consideration of your rapid advancement and military expansion, we have drafted the Sovereignty Limitation Act." Una felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard rumors about this for months, but she had hoped they were wrong. Vel continued reading from the glowing document before him. "Humanity will surrender 60% of all military vessels to the Council for decommission. All scientific research must be submitted to the Council for review and approval before implementation. Council observers will be stationed permanently on Earth and all human colonies to ensure compliance." Whispers spread through the chamber. Some aliens nodded in approval. Others looked uncomfortable. Una noticed Counselor Thorm, a massive creature covered in thick scales, watching her with obvious satisfaction. He had always hated humans. Now he was getting what he wanted. "May I speak?" Una asked, her voice steady, despite the anger building inside her. Vel waved one of his four hands dismissively. "You may." "High Arbiter, humanity has been a loyal member of this council for 80 years. We have followed your laws. We have traded fairly. We have never attacked another species without provocation. Why are we being punished?" Thorm let out a harsh laugh. "Punished? This is protection, human. Protection for the galaxy." "Protection from what?" Una demanded. "From you," Thorm said simply. He stood up from his seat, his massive body casting a shadow over the delegates below him. "Your ships are too fast. Your weapons are too powerful. Your soldiers are too hard to kill. You have been part of this council for less than a century, yet your technology already rivals species that have existed for thousands of years." He pointed one clawed finger at Una. "You are dangerous. You grow too quickly. If we do not contain you now, how long before you decide to take what you want by force?" Una stared at him. "We have never shown any desire to conquer anyone." "Not yet," Thorm replied. "But you will. It is in your nature. We have studied your history. Your kind has spent most of its existence killing each other. Now you have reached the stars, and we are supposed to believe you have changed." The chamber erupted in murmurs. Una looked around and saw fear in many alien eyes. They were afraid of humanity. They had always been afraid. High Arbiter Vel raised his hands for silence. "The Council's decision is final. You have 30 standard days to accept these terms and begin compliance. If you refuse, there will be consequences." "What kind of consequences?" Una asked quietly. Vel's silver eyes met hers. "The kind that no species has ever survived." Una said nothing. She simply nodded once, turned around, and walked out of the chamber. She could feel thousands of eyes on her back, but she did not look behind her. She kept walking until she reached her private quarters on the station. Only then did she allow herself to breathe. She sat down at her desk and activated the secure communication channel. It took only moments for the face of Admiral Tehun to appear on the screen. He was a man in his 60s, with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen too many battles. "I watched the broadcast," he said before she could speak. "The whole fleet watched it." "Then you know what they want?" Una replied. "They want our teeth pulled," Tehun said grimly. "They want us weak and helpless. If we agree to this, any species with a grudge could attack us, and we would have no way to fight back." "Thorm would love that," Una muttered. "But he is not wrong about one thing." The Admiral leaned forward. "We are dangerous. Not because we want to hurt anyone, but because we refuse to be victims." "That scares them." Una rubbed her temples. "What do we do?" "If we refuse, they will send their enforcement fleet. We cannot fight the entire galaxy."
"I see."
"No," Tehun agreed. "We cannot, but we do not have to." "What do you mean?" The Admiral was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with something that sounded almost like sadness. Tell them we need time to consider their demands. Be polite. Be diplomatic. Buy us 30 days. And then what? And then we leave. And Hyon's eyes hardened. We pull every human out of council space. We close our borders. We go home and we make it very clear that anyone who follows us will regret it. Una stared at him. You want us to withdraw from the council? Completely? I want us to survive, the Admiral replied. We joined this council because we hope to find friends among the stars. Instead, we found politicians who see us as a threat to be controlled. I will not let them put chains on humanity, Una. Not while I breathe. The weight of his words settled over her like a heavy blanket. She thought about Earth, about the colonies, about the billions of humans who had no idea what was being decided in this cold chamber among the stars. They will not let us go peacefully, she said. No, Tae-hoon agreed. They will not. But that will be their choice, not ours. He paused. Start packing your things, Una, and tell your staff to do the same. When those 30 days are up, I want every human ready to come home. The screen went dark. Una sat alone in the silence, staring at the stars outside her window. For 80 years, humanity had tried to be part of something greater. They had followed the rules. They had played the game, and now the game was over. She stood up, straightened her uniform, and began to pack. The war room beneath Seoul was filled with the most powerful people on Earth. Presidents, generals, scientists, and admirals sat around a massive table, their faces lit by holographic displays showing star maps and fleet positions. The air was thick with tension. Admiral Tae-hoon stood at the head of the table, his hands clasped behind his back. He had called this emergency meeting the moment Ambassador Una Park's report arrived from Nexus Station. Now everyone knew what the Galactic Council demanded. Let me be clear, said President Su-min, a woman with tired eyes and iron will. If we accept these terms, we lose our ability to defend ourselves. That is correct, General Daewoo replied. He was a large man with a scarred face, earned from battles fought long before humanity reached the stars. 60% of our fleet means 60% of our strength. The ships they would leave us could not protect Earth, let alone the colonies. And the scientific review? Asked another voice. All eyes turned to Dr. Hannah Lee, the chief scientist of humanity's most classified research division. She was young for her position, barely 40, but her mind was sharper than anyone else in the room. If the council reviews our research, they will find Project Horizon, she said quietly. The room went still. Project Horizon was humanity's greatest secret. For 20 years, the brightest scientists on Earth had worked on a new kind of faster-than-light drive. The Council's ships could cross a star system in hours. Human ships could do it in minutes. But Project Horizon would allow them to cross the entire galaxy in weeks. If the Council learned about it, they would take it. Or destroy it. Or both. So compliance is not an option, President Su-min said. It was not a question. No, Admiral Tae-hoon agreed. It is not. Then what? General Daewoo demanded. We fight against the entire council? Their enforcement fleet alone has more ships than we have ever built. We do not fight, Tae-han said. We leave. The room erupted in confused voices. Tae-hoon raised his hand for silence. The council expects 2 responses from us, he explained. They expect us to submit or to attack. They have prepared for both, but they have not prepared for a third option. He touched a control, and the holographic display changed. It showed the human sphere, the region of space that contained Earth and all human colonies. Red lines marked the borders with council territory. We withdraw completely, Tae-hoon continued. Every human, every ship, every piece of equipment. We pull back inside our borders, and we close the door. No trade, no communication, no diplomacy. We become a wall that they cannot see past. And if they follow us? General Daewoo asked. And they start the war, not us. And we defend our home with everything we have. Silence fell over the room. The leaders of humanity looked at each other, weighing the impossible choice before them. President Su-min spoke first. If we do this, There is no going back. We will be alone. We have always been alone, Tehan replied softly. We just pretended otherwise. The vote was taken. It was unanimous. 3 hours later, Admiral Taehyun stood on the bridge of his flagship, the carrier Eternal Soul. Around him, officers worked at their stations, preparing the largest military operation in human history. Not an attack, a retreat. A closing of doors, his communication officer looked up. Sir, Ambassador Rin from the Keth Republic is requesting a secure channel. Tehan raised an eyebrow. The Keth had always been friendlier to humans than most species. Put her through. The alien's face appeared on screen. Rin had blue skin and large dark eyes that seemed perpetually sad. Admiral Taehyun, I hope I am not disturbing you. Not at all, Ambassador. What can I do for you? Rin hesitated. I wanted to warn you. Counselor Thorm is not waiting for your answer. He has already begun mobilizing the enforcement fleet. He expects you to refuse, and he wants to be ready to strike the moment you do. Expression did not change. I appreciate the warning, Admiral. Rin's voice dropped. Not all of us agree with what the Council is doing. Many species admire humanity. We think you have been treated unfairly. Then why'd you not speak up in the chamber? Rin looked away. We were afraid. Thorm has powerful allies. Anyone who opposes him risks becoming his next target. She met his eyes again. I am sorry. I know that is not good enough. No, Taeyan agreed. It is not. But I appreciate your honesty. Paused. Tell your people to stay clear of the human borders, Ambassador. Things are about to become very dangerous for anyone who gets too close. He cut the channel before she could respond. The Admiral walked to the center of the bridge and looked out at the stars. In a few hours, he would give the order that would change everything. Humanity would turn its back on the galaxy and face the darkness alone. He activated the fleet-wide broadcast. His voice would reach every human ship, every station, every colony. Billions of people would hear what he was about to say. This is Admiral Taehyun speaking. By now, you have all heard what the Galactic Council demands of us. They want our ships. They want our science. They want to put observers on our worlds to watch our every move. They say it is for peace, but we know the truth. It is about control. It is about fear. He paused, letting the words sink in. We came to the stars seeking friends. We found politics. We found species that looked at us and saw only a threat to be contained. For 80 years, we played by their rules. We smiled. We bowed. We hoped things would get better. His voice hardened. Today, we stop asking for permission to exist. Today, we go home. Every human in Council space will be evacuated. Every ship will return to the human sphere. And when we are home, we will close our borders. Anyone who tries to follow us, anyone who tries to force their way in, will learn why the Council was afraid of us in the first place. He took a deep breath. This is not an act of war. This is an act of survival. We did not ask for this fight, but we will finish it if they force us to. Stand ready. The evacuation begins at dawn. The broadcast ended. Admiral Taehyun looked at his officers. They stared back at him with determination in their eyes. No fear, no doubt. Only resolve. You heard the order, he said quietly. Let us bring our people home. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. Ambassador Una Park stood in the same spot where she had received the ultimatum 30 days ago. But this time, she was not here to listen. She was here to deliver humanity's answer. High Arbiter Vel looked down at her with his cold silver eyes. Ambassador Park, have you come to announce Earth's compliance with the Sovereignty Limitation Act? Una took a deep breath. No, High Arbiter. I have come to announce humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Council. The silence shattered into chaos. Aliens shouted, screamed, and argued. Some laughed as if she had told a joke. Counselor Thorm rose from his seat, his scales flushing dark red with anger. You cannot be serious, he growled. I am completely serious, Una replied calmly. Effective immediately, Humanity is ending all diplomatic, economic, and social ties with the Council. All human personnel are being evacuated from Council space as we speak. Our borders are now closed. High Arbiter Vel raised his forehands, demanding silence. The chamber slowly quieted, though angry murmurs continued. "This is madness," Vel said. "No species has ever left the Council voluntarily. You cannot survive alone." "We will find out," Una said. "But we would rather face the unknown than live as prisoners in your perfect order." Thorm slammed his fist against his console. "This is unacceptable. I demand that the enforcement fleet be deployed immediately to bring these rebels to heel." Una smiled slightly. "You may try, Counselor, but I would advise against it." She turned and walked out of the chamber for the last time. Behind her, she could hear Thorm screaming for action. She did not look back. Far across Council space, the great evacuation was already underway. Human stations went dark one by one as their crews boarded transport ships and headed for home. Embassies were emptied. Trade vessels turned around mid-journey. Factories shut down. In a matter of days, every trace of human presence in Council territory began to disappear. It was the largest coordinated movement of people in galactic history, and it was executed with perfect precision. Captain Seok Jin stood on the bridge of the battleship Defiance. Watching the final convoy of civilian transports approach the border, his ship was part of a small escort wing, only 12 vessels in total. Their job was simple: protect the civilians, get them home safely. "Sir," his sensor officer reported, "I am detecting multiple contacts approaching from Council space. Configuration matches the enforcement fleet." Seok Jin nodded slowly. "How many?" 60 ships, sir. Commander Doc's flagship is leading them. 12 against 60. The odds were not good. But Seok Jin had faced worse. "Signal the convoy to increase speed," he ordered. "Get them across the border. We will handle our guests." The Defiance and its escorts moved to intercept the approaching fleet. The civilian transports behind them pushed their engines to maximum, racing for the safety of human space. Commander Doc's face appeared on the communication screen. He was an ugly creature with a face full of scars and eyes that held no mercy. He had spent his entire career crushing rebellions and punishing species that defied the Council. He had never lost. "Human vessel," Doc said with a sneer. "You are ordered to stand down and surrender. Your evacuation is illegal. Your ships and personnel will be taken into custody." Seok Jin leaned back in his chair. "Commander Doc, you are approaching sovereign human space. I am ordering you to turn back." Doc laughed. "Sovereign? You are nothing. You are a young species that has forgotten its place. Stand down now, or I will destroy you." "I will not ask again," Seok Jin said quietly. "Turn back, or we will interpret your advance as an act of war." Doc's smile faded. "You have 12 ships. I have 60. Do you really think you can stop me?" Seok Jin did not answer. He simply cut the communication channel and turned to his crew. Battle stations. The enforcement fleet continued forward. They did not slow down. Commander Doc was confident. His ships were larger, more numerous, and more heavily armed. He had crushed 100 enemies with fewer advantages. He did not understand what he was facing. The Battle of the Veil lasted 11 minutes. It began when the Defiance fired the first shot, a new type of weapon that the Council had never seen. The beam cut through Doc's lead ship like a knife through paper, splitting it in half. Before the debris had even begun to scatter, the other human ships opened fire. They moved like ghosts, faster than anything Doc had ever fought. His targeting systems could not lock onto them. His weapons fired into empty space where human ships had been a moment before. Meanwhile, human weapons tore his fleet apart. Seok Jin commanded his small force with cold precision. He had studied Council tactics for years. He knew their weaknesses, their blind spots, their arrogance. He exploited every single one. Within 5 minutes, half of Doc's fleet was destroyed or disabled. The commander screamed orders, but his crews were in panic. They had never faced an enemy like this. They had never imagined losing to such a small force. At the 8-minute mark, Doc ordered a retreat. His remaining ships turned and fled, leaving their burning comrades behind. The human vessels did not pursue. They simply watched as the enforcement fleet ran away. The civilian convoy crossed into human space safely. Not a single transport was harmed. Seguin allowed himself a small smile as he watched the council ships disappear. His communication officer looked up at him. "Sir, the Admiral is requesting a report." "Tell him the border is secure," Seokujin replied. "Tell him we are coming home." Across the galaxy, news of the battle spread like wildfire. The enforcement fleet, the feared hammer of the Galactic Council, had been broken by a handful of human ships. Commander Doc had limped back to Council space in disgrace. The species that had mocked humanity, that had demanded their surrender, fell silent. For the first time, they truly understood what they were dealing with. In her quarters on the last transport leaving Council space, Ambassador Unipark watched the stars slip past her window. Behind her, the galaxy she had known for most of her life grew smaller and smaller. Ahead of her was home, and beyond that, only uncertainty. She thought about the Council, about the fear in their eyes, about the war that might still come. She thought about all the hopes she had carried for 80 years, hopes for friendship and cooperation among the stars. Those hopes were dead now. All that remained was survival. Her communicator beeped. Admiral Taehyun's voice came through. "Ambassador, welcome home," Una smiled sadly. "Thank you, Admiral. What happens now?" "Now," Taehyun paused. "Now we wait, and we prepare. The Council will not forget what happened today. They will come for us eventually. And when they do, we will be ready." The transport crossed the border, and the great doors of human space closed behind it. The human sphere fell silent, and the galaxy held its breath. 6 months passed. The human sphere remained closed. No ships entered or left. No signals came out. No messages were answered. The region of space that contained Earth and all its colonies had become a black void on every star map. Present, but completely unreachable. The Galactic Council pretended that everything was fine. High Arbiter Vel gave speeches about stability and order. Counselor Thorm demanded military action every single day. But behind closed doors, panic was spreading no one had realized. How much the galaxy depended on humanity. Human medicine had cured diseases that alien science could not understand. Now those cures were gone. Human technology had made ships faster and factories more efficient. Now that technology was unavailable, human food, human music, human art, human entertainment, all of it had vanished overnight. Species that had traded with humans for decades found their economies collapsing. Worlds that had relied on human innovation stopped advancing. The great engine of galactic progress had lost one of its most important parts. Everyone could feel it. Ambassador Rin stood before the Council, pleading for peace. "We must reach out to them," she argued. "We must apologize for the Sovereignty Limitation Act. We must find a way to bring them back." Counselor Thorm laughed at her. "Apologize? To those primitives? Never. They have insulted the Council. They have killed our soldiers. They must be punished." "Punished how?" Rin demanded. "You saw what happened at the Vale. A handful of their ships destroyed Commander Doc's entire vanguard. If we attack them in their own territory, what do you think will happen?" Thorm had no answer for that. The truth was simple. The Council was afraid. They had always been afraid of humanity, and now that fear had grown into something close to terror. Every species wondered the same thing. What were the humans doing behind those closed borders? What were they building? What were they planning? No one knew. And the not knowing was the worst part. Deep inside the human sphere, life continued. The cities grew. Factories produced. Ships were built. But the greatest work was happening in secret. In laboratories hidden beneath mountains and stations floating in empty space, Dr. Hannah Lee stood in the control room of Research Station 7, watching as the latest test of the Horizon Drive began. A small probe sat in the center of the testing chamber, its hull glowing with strange energy. Around her, scientists held their breath. "Activate the drive," Hannah ordered. The probe vanished. There was no flash, no explosion, no dramatic effect. It simply stopped existing in one place and started existing in another. 10 seconds later, a signal arrived from the probe. It had traveled 50,000 light-years in less than a heartbeat. It was now in a region of space that no Council species had ever reached. Surrounded by stars and planets that no one had ever seen, the scientists erupted in cheers. Hannah allowed herself a small smile. Project Horizon was complete. She made her way to Admiral Taehyun's office and delivered the news. The Admiral listened quietly, his weathered face showing no emotion. "How soon can we begin full production?" he asked. 6 months for the first ships? A year for the fleet?" Taehyun nodded slowly. He walked to the window of his office and looked out at the stars. From here, he could see the shipyards where new vessels were being constructed. Designs that the Council had never seen, technology that made their most advanced ships look like toys. "We have also found something else," Hannah continued. "The probe discovered resource-rich systems in unexplored space. Minerals, rare elements, everything we need to sustain ourselves indefinitely, so we do not need the Council." "No, sir, we never did." Taehyun was silent for a long moment. Then he smiled, just slightly. "Good. Let them wonder what we are building out here." At the edge of human space, a small ship approached the border. It was Ambassador Rin, traveling alone in a personal vessel. She had spent weeks trying to get permission for this journey. The Council had refused, so she had come anyway. She stopped at the invisible line that marked human territory and sent a message into the void. "This is Ambassador Rin of the Keth Republic. I request contact with the human government. I come in peace, with information that may interest you." For 3 days there was no response. Rin waited, sleeping in her cramped cockpit, eating emergency rations, watching the stars. She had almost given up hope when a single human ship appeared. It was the Defiance. Captain Seok-jin's face appeared on her screen. "Ambassador Rin," he said. "You are a long way from home, Captain Seok-jin. Thank you for responding. I was beginning to think no one would come. We see everything that happens at our borders. We have been watching you since you arrived." Seok-jin's expression was unreadable. "Why are you here?" Rin took a deep breath. "I bring a message. Not from the Council, they do not know I am here. But for many species who did not support the Sovereignty Limitation Act, we want you to know that not everyone agrees with what Vel and Thorm did. Many of us admired humanity. Many of us miss you. That is kind of you to say, Seok, Jin replied. But words mean nothing. When Thorm demanded our submission, where were your voices? When Doc's fleet came to capture our civilians, where were your ships? Rin looked away in shame. We were afraid. We are still afraid. Thorm has powerful allies. Anyone who opposes him openly becomes a target. You hide and hope someone else will solve your problems. Yes, Rin met his eyes. I am not proud of it. But I wanted you to know that the galaxy is not all your enemy. Some of us want peace. Some of us want you to come back. Seok-jin was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was not unkind, but it was firm. We did not leave because of you, Ambassador. We left because your leaders decided we were a problem to be solved. They looked at us and saw only a threat, something to be controlled or destroyed. Until that changes, there is nothing to discuss. And if it does change, Rin asked desperately, if the Council reforms, if Thorm is removed, then we will listen, but we will not hold our breath. Seok-jin paused. Go home, Ambassador. Tell your people what you saw here. Tell them that humanity is not their enemy, but we are no longer their friend either. We stand alone now, and we will defend that solitude with everything we have. Cut the channel. The Defiance turned and vanished back into human space. Rin sat alone in her ship, staring at the empty void where the human vessel had been. She had come looking for hope. Instead, she had found only cold determination. She turned her ship around and began the long journey home. Behind her, the human sphere remained silent, but it was not empty. Far from it, in the darkness, humanity was preparing, building, growing stronger with every passing day. The galaxy had pushed them away, and now they were becoming something new, something that no one had ever seen before, something terrifying. 2 years had passed since humanity closed its borders. In that time, the Galactic Council had changed beyond recognition. Councillor Thorm was gone, removed from power after his aggressive policies led to economic collapse across a dozen systems. High Arbiter Vel faced daily protests, demanding his resignation. Species that had once feared to speak now openly criticized the Council's treatment of humanity. The great alliance that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years was cracking at its foundations. The new leaders were desperate. They had tried everything to fix the damage. New trade agreements, new research programs, new alliances. Nothing worked. The hole that humanity had left was too large to fill. Finally, after months of debate, the Council voted to do something that had never been done before. They would send a formal delegation to the human sphere. Not with demands, not with threats, but with an apology. The delegation consisted of 5 ambassadors from the most powerful species in the Council. They traveled in the finest diplomatic vessel available, carrying gifts and documents promising full recognition of human sovereignty, compensation for the Battle of the Veil, and an offer that had never been made to any young species: a permanent seat on the High Council itself. They arrived at the human border and stopped. Then they sent their message into the void and waited. 1 day passed. Then 2. Then 3. On the 4th day, space itself seemed to tear open. Ships emerged from nowhere, appearing in flashes of light that left the aliens gasping. Not dozens of ships, hundreds. A fleet larger than anything the delegation had ever seen, moving in perfect formation. The vessels were unlike anything in the Council's records, sleek, deadly, radiating power that made the diplomatic ship's sensors. Screamed with warnings at the head of the fleet was a ship so massive it blocked out the stars. The New Dawn, humanity's first Horizon-class dreadnought. It was beautiful and terrifying, a monument to what humanity had become in 2 years of solitude. The delegation leader, the elderly diplomat named Fen, transmitted a shaky greeting. "Human fleet, this is the Galactic Council delegation. We come in peace. We request permission to speak with your leadership." There was a long pause. Then a calm voice responded. "This is Admiral Taehoon of the United Earth Fleet. You may board the New Dawn. Come alone." "Ambassador Fen, your escorts will remain here." Fen's hands trembled as he boarded the small shuttle that would carry him to the human flagship. His colleagues had begged him not to go alone, but he knew he had no choice. After what the Council had done, he was in no position to make demands. The interior of the New Dawn was nothing like he expected. There were no threatening soldiers lining the corridors, no weapons pointed at him. Instead, human officers walked past him calmly, barely sparing him a glance. They did not seem hostile. They simply did not seem to care. Admiral Taehoon was waiting for him in a large observation room. The Admiral was older than Fen remembered from the broadcasts, his hair fully white now, but his eyes were just as sharp. Beside him stood Ambassador Una Park, her face calm and unreadable. "Ambassador Fen," Taehoon said, gesturing to a chair. "Please, sit. I understand you have something to say." Fen sat down heavily. His prepared speech suddenly felt foolish in his mouth, but he delivered it anyway. He spoke of the Council's regrets. He spoke of the suffering caused by humanity's absence. He spoke of the changes that had been made, the leaders that had been removed, the new era of cooperation that awaited if only humanity would return. Then he presented the offer. Full sovereignty recognition, reparations, a seat on the High Council. When he finished, he sat back and waited. His heart pounded in his chest. Admiral Taehoon looked at Una. Something passed between them. Some silent communication that Fen could not understand. Then the Admiral stood and walked to the window, looking out at the massive fleet that surrounded them. 2 years ago, Taehoon began, "You told us we were dangerous. You were right, but not in the way you thought." He turned to face Fen. "We are dangerous because we do not need you. We never did. We joined your council because we hoped for friendship, for shared dreams among the stars. We wanted to believe that the galaxy was a place of wonder and cooperation, where different species could work together for the good of all. His voice hardened slightly. You answered with chains. You looked at us and saw only a threat to be controlled. You demanded our surrender, and when we refused, you sent warships to take our people by force. Fen started to speak, but Tae-hun raised his hand. Let me finish. In the 2 years since we left, we have discovered things beyond your imagination. Our ships can cross the galaxy in weeks. We have found resources that will sustain us for millennia. We have built weapons that your scientists cannot even understand. He paused. We do not need your trade. We do not need your technology. We do not need your approval. The Admiral returned to his seat and looked at Fen with something that might have been pity. We will not rejoin your council, Ambassador. That door is closed. But we will not be your enemy, either, unless you make us one. Go home. Tell your people that humanity stands alone. We are not interested in revenge. We are not interested in conquest. We simply want to be left in peace. Fen's voice was barely a whisper. And if we accept that, if we leave you alone, then you have nothing to fear from us. We will watch. We will wait. If you ever truly change, truly become the alliance of equals you pretend to be, perhaps we will talk again. Tae-hun stood, signaling that the meeting was over, but I would not count on it. Fen rose on shaking legs. He had come with hope. He was leaving with nothing. As he walked back to his shuttle, he passed rows of human crew members. They were young, confident, completely unafraid. They looked at him not with hatred, but with something worse, indifference. He was irrelevant to them. His entire council was irrelevant. The shuttle carried him back to his ship. The delegation departed in silence. The human fleet watched them go, then turned and vanished back into the void as suddenly as they had appeared. On the observation deck of the New Dawn, Una Park stood beside Admiral Tae-hun, watching the council ships shrink into the distance. Do you think they will try again? She asked. Tae-yon considered the question. Eventually. Fear makes people do foolish things. They will look at us and see what they have lost, what they could never control. Some of them will accept it. Others will not. And when they come, the Admiral smiled just slightly. It was not a cruel smile, but it was not warm either. It was the smile of someone who had seen too much, who had hoped for too long, and who had finally accepted the truth. Then they will learn why they were afraid in the first place. He placed his hand on her shoulder gently. We wanted peace, Una. We always wanted peace, but not at the cost of who we are. Not at the cost of our freedom. Una nodded slowly. She thought about the young woman she had been 80 years ago, full of hope and dreams of cooperation among the stars. That woman seemed like a stranger now. What do we do now? She asked. Tae-hun looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the borders of known space, new worlds were waiting. New frontiers. New possibilities. The galaxy had rejected humanity, but the universe was vast beyond imagination. Now we go forward, he said. We build. We explore. We become something greater than they ever imagined. And we never forget what they taught us. What did they teach us? The Admiral's eyes hardened. That we can only trust ourselves? The New Dawn turned toward the unknown, its engines humming with power that the Council could not comprehend. Behind it, the rest of the human fleet followed, vanishing into the darkness one by one. The Galactic Council would watch the empty border for years, waiting for humanity to return. They would send more delegations, more offers, more desperate pleas for reconciliation. None would be answered. Humanity had walked away from peace, and they had found something better. They had found themselves.